Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into this episode of Real Talk Fishing with No Limits. Today, we're going to cover out on some hot topics. So, we've been getting some emails, some DMs. Everybody's got questions. NWT has released its new payout schedule and pay-in schedule, as well as the tournament schedules. The updated version was out a month ago or so. And as we roll into the new year, registration opens up. There's usually some new rules and things like that will come out as well. So hopefully we can get Jeff Kelm on here, the tournament director, sometime after those release, and we can discuss that. If there's any changes or modifications, I expect there to be a few. So, hey, first off, Merry Christmas. Hope you all are enjoying some time off with your family and friends this week. Ice, you get a chance to go out over this holiday break. If you're getting some downtime, hit the ice. Ice fishing bite has been great. I have yet to get out myself, wait for the river to freeze up, which hopefully this week it happens. So definitely going to get out there maybe by the weekend and definitely over the Christmas time down for sure. So hot topics. That's it. It's just me. This will be fairly brief. National Walleye Tour has just released their payout schedule for 2025. And the headline was, this is where a lot of you aren't very happy. 2025 into payout increase in registration date. So registration date's not a big deal. That's typical. Usually around that second week of January through February, they had a lot of co-anglers can register at these certain times and stuff like that. Us pros that fish the pro side, typically a very large percentage don't register till the last minute because there's no incentive to give somebody else your money until then. So payout increases. So with the payout increase, what they've done is went from a typical, used to be 1 in 4. So 25% of the field got paid out. Walleye Federation took it over a couple years ago. They revamped some stuff. Bass Pro was the majority owner of this, went to 1 in 5. So 20% of the field got paid out. Fees went from $15 to $17.50. I think they did that before the change in management. Well, now those fees are going from $1,750 to $2,000 per angler on the pro side, and I believe co's went from $5 to $650. On the co-angler side, supply and demand is pretty simple. There's been a long waiting list. It's difficult for some of the co's to get in if you're not signing up for all 4. So the prices continue to go up. Once again, it's $650 for 2 days to jump in a pro's boat. However you may take that. You're not going to get a guide trip for 2 days. Obviously, it's not the same thing. You're competing, for a payout, for a pot. I believe it's up to 10 grand. Now, all those numbers are based off the entry fees are what they are. It doesn't matter how many people are in or not. But the payouts are based on a 125 boat field. So last year, the average was like 100, and I can't remember. Balla would know, 108 or 113 or something like that. It wasn't 125. And now you need a full 125 boat field in all 4 tournaments to keep those championship payouts where they're at. Now, nothing has changed in the championship payouts. It's still top 40 in points qualify. Top 20 get paid out. I think the last place check is, let me look, make sure I get it right, like 4,000 or something. Championship payout, 41.63 for 20th. Nothing has changed there. Now, how that changes is if you don't average the 125 boat field. I know 2 years ago they were really close. Sault Ste. Marie numbers were down, so we just fell underneath. It was like a $600 difference. Bass Pro said, we got it covered. We're going to still get you full payout. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. I think they may have done that again this year. They fell short of it, but they still may have given them the championship a full payout. So that's coming directly from your title sponsor. So good on them. Anglers all, of course, appreciate that. However, rolling into 2025, I think we may be dealing with some different terms. Complete speculation. However, you've heard me on here before the last 6 months saying I anticipate a payout modification to 1 in 4. Boom, just happened. And a pay-in increase to 2,000. Boom, it just happened. So what does that mean? I know quite a few guys that aren't fishing next season. However, there's always a new bunch of anglers, new co's that are moving up the pro side, or other guys that are just, kind of getting into it. So the 1 in 4 is better than 1 and 5. Obviously, we're paying out another 5% of anglers, which is great because it's going to pay further down the line. And as long as you keep that 125, you're looking at those last 5-6 spots. You're going to probably be anywhere from 4 to 6 additional payout spots. It depends on how many people are in each tournament. So if you have less than 125 in a tournament, let's use your second place is 20,000. That's going to drop to 19 something, right? And it's just going to come down. Now, if you go over 125, that's supposed to be right at that 20,000. It might go to 20,100, whatever the case is. It moves up and down just a little bit based off the amount of entries, first places, whatever boat they've designated, and 15 in cash. And that one doesn't change. It's everything else down the line that changes. To my knowledge, I haven't seen that first place cash payout change any, because really it's the boat, whether it's a $69,000 Nitro or $89,000 Ranger. That's that. So you add up 125 anglers at $250 a piece in additional funds. That's a 31,250, I believe. Yeah, 31,250. And then if you look at the 5% payout, of course, they're making some money on the back, and this is not a nonprofit. National Walleye Tour is a business, okay? And the cost of business, we all know, has gone up considerably the last few years. I imagine the boat prices have gone up. It looks like maybe a couple thousand from 2024 to 2025. So that is, folds into that first place prize, as well as the championship and the Angler of the Year, as well as just cost of doing business, keeping up their back end operations, their fuel, all the travel and all that kind of stuff. It just costs more. Maybe they've hired more staff. I have no idea. I don't run the organization. Not sure what is going on over there on that, but it's not my business. So my business is show up and catch fish, right? So a lot of negative comments about it, people. Fishing tournaments has always been, anglers are playing with their own money. We're competing against each other for our own money. If you do all the math, you look at it, you look at the boat value in there as what it's listed, no idea what they pay for it. White River Marine Group provides those boats. White River Marine Group is owned by Bass Pro. Bass Pro is a title sponsor. Who knows what their cost is for those boats? It really doesn't concern me at all. If they're not making money, then the circuit doesn't continue, right? So they obviously are making some, may not make a lot. There's not a lot of money to be made in these tournament things, for as much travel and work that can be involved with them, especially to take them, up to these next levels. So I lost my train of thought there. Anywho, if you look at the total payout minus the entry fees, you're still at it's over 100%, 105%. Now you can take out the angler advantage, because that is 100% angler money going back to the anglers that participated, and that was $250 if you chose to get in. I believe the co-anglers have it as well for $100 on their side, and it may be coming out in 2025 that they got rid of that, and that money is now just part of your 2,000, right? No more angler advantage, but if the percentage of people that were participating in that isn't as good as it used to be. You used to be able to sign up at the rules meeting, so you had a little more confidence or less confidence in your practice. Like, hey, I think I'm on something good. I'm going to go ahead and play the side pot, right? That's what it is. You're betting an extra $250 on yourself, and that pot could go up. Well, now you have to pay that when you register. So you're a couple weeks out and you haven't been to the fishery. You have no idea, right? You're still just betting on yourself. So it's come down just a little bit. I personally don't play in that. I'd rather go to the casino, throw $250 on blackout or even, and take my money and walk away. But I'm going to use Red Wing in an example last year. Well, that's an extra $16,000, almost $17,000 in side pot money distributed amongst those top 5 to 10 anglers that entered in it. So you could be the third place finisher in the tournament, but being the first place finisher in angler advantage if the top 2 didn't get in it, and get that, $6,000 bonus on top of it. So it's a good thing. It's available. If you want in it, get in it. If you don't, you don't. Same with the co-anglers, I believe, was only $100. You take that out, you take contingency money, because that's not coming out of the federation's pocket. That's coming out of the boat manufacturers, the motors, mainly White River Marine Group, the Ranger, Nitros, and Tritons. I believe Camus has stuff, but that's not included on anything you'll see, because that comes separate. So if you're a Camus owner, you turn that in separate. I'm not sure if Lund does, or Skeeter and Warrior. I think they all have a little something. but that's not figured in any of their payouts. Those are handled from the ownership group or your boat manufacturer to the boat owner. Turn those results into those organizations later, and then they get cut checks. There's some Garmin bonuses, some TH Marine. There's a couple $100 here and there. Right. So Red Wing, that equaled about 12.7, just under 13 grand. So that doesn't come out of the Federation's pocket neither, but those are all considered as part of the winnings. That's how fishing tournaments go. If you look at the AIM circuit, there's really a lot of contingency money out there, especially in the Nitro Ranger Triton, world. If you have so many boats with certain size of field and certain size motors, you qualify for this money, and occasionally it can be higher than the payout of the tournament, or really right at it. So those are important things you need to think about when you're tournament fishing and getting into it. And there's obviously requirements such as being signed up and registered for those contingencies, and your boat and your motor, your electronics meeting all the specifications, right? I think our boats have to be at least 3 years or old or newer to qualify for all those White River Marine Group ones. That's WRMG. If you're wondering, you see people comment about it. That's White River Marine Group that owns Nitro Ranger, Triton, Tracker, and another line of boats. So tournament fishing is always, it's gambling, period. That's what it is. So the house, if you've been to a casino, the house always wins. The house is making money. That's how they operate the casino. The tournament organizations always making money. That's how they operate the tournaments. If they're not making money, we as anglers don't have tournaments to fish. So be grateful for that there's a circuit to fish. And the reality is, if you don't like it, you don't like the payout schedule, you don't like paying extra fees, then don't fish it. It's 100% up to you. So that's how it works. There's plenty, and I mean plenty of circuits on the local levels that have $300 or $400 or $500 entry fees that have $10,000 payouts. And ultimately, we all do this because we're competitive, and we love to do it. And we're most of the pros are confident enough that you're going to go ahead and bet on yourself to do well. If you're fishing tournaments to make a living, you are in the wrong business. It is a horrible business plan, and it's not really the greatest financial decision sometimes. I see a lot of comments that, hey, these guys are all sponsored, so they're not playing with their money anyway. We're not the bass world. I hate to break it to you, folks, but in the walleye world, I would be hard-pressed if more than, not everybody knows everybody's situation, but 20%, maybe 30% of the field is sponsored anglers. I'm fortunate. I have work with great companies, and get taken care of well enough to cover my entry fees and this isn't cheap. It costs a lot to travel and what have you. But these pros that are sponsored they're not just sitting back. They're earning this money. They're earning every bit of it, and are choosing and working with these great companies that support, the anglers and the angling industry, the fishing industry, and the community and the circuit. In a lot of cases, they don't really care if you fish tournaments or not. You may be being sponsored for other aspects of what you're doing. It could be podcasts, could be YouTube, could be your guiding, could be, your social, your influence, right? Your working events, stores, shows, whatever the case is. It's a whole nother spectrum about it. To become sponsored, you got to have a platform. And if it's just tournaments, then that tournament circuit needs to be a really, explosive platform, or large enough for those guys to get a rate of return on their investment into the angler. Bass, everybody compares, well, the bass people do this. We aren't comparable. We are not apples and oranges. We're fish and fish, right? We're bass and walleye, but billions versus millions, there's a big difference. And they have a lot of staff, a lot of millions of dollars thrown into production and all that. Been around a long time, but they still have their own hurdles, and they've been jumping through hoops and dealing with things over there as well. And it's a great place for us to watch and learn and follow examples from. Bass has been doing this forever. They lead the way in it on the conservation side of things, sponsorship marketing, and how they promote and do things. It's not as easy on the walleye world, where it's a smaller demographic, pretty much, northern upper Midwest. There's millions of bass anglers and there's millions of walleye anglers, but there's always, there's more bass anglers. So there's more money coming into those products. Now, I would say there's I'd make the argument that the walleye guys may spend more money. Our boats cost more. We're tackle junkies. So maybe there is more money being spent on the walleye side, but I don't know. That's a good question for Berkeley or somebody like that to ask them what baits are selling the most. And last I heard, they sell more walleye baits. So, and that's on the walleye anglers because we got to have 3 or 4 of each, right? When you're talking crankbaits. So a lot of money in it. You're betting on yourself. You guys want to complain about this and that, it's gambling. It's that simple. If you don't like it, you don't pay it. We're fortunate and unfortunate enough in the walleye world that it's a pay to play. Heard some comments on there like, well, just get rid of the co's and have 2 pros sign up and pay the same thing and increase payouts. Well, that's called the MWC. It's a team circuit. There's a big difference between a team circuit and a pro-am circuit. The MWT is a pro-am, a pro and an amateur. Sounds like they're going to always keep 2 people in the boat for safety issues because we fish a lot of big water. I get it. Makes sense. And the co thing is it's a little different kind of a beast. I don't really pay a lot of attention to it or follow it a whole lot because it's not my realm or really my concern. I think the co sign up. Someone, I believe Hoyer said it once in a meeting, said it's a privilege to get a jump on one of these guys' boats. That may be the case most of the time. I get it. It doesn't always work out that way. You're going to run into situations. We'll talk about that here in a minute when we deal with the schedule. But just take it in, man. If you're a co, you're jumping in, you're there to learn, watch. That pro wants you to do well, but then again, this isn't a guide trip where it's not his job to educate you and tell you how to tie stuff on and do things. Most of them do. They want you to be successful because if you're successful, they're successful because the boat is what you're weighing in that day, right? The combined weight in that boat versus both anglers. Now it's live scoping. Things have changed a little bit. It's a little different. A lot of stories out there where I'm just running the net, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's the case because the guy up front's catching them so fast. And it's just, that's the world we live in now. It's different. We will see come January if there's any modifications to that or to some of these limits that we had to deal with last year with the no party fishing, which was the rule everywhere we went. This year, we'll get into that right now. The schedule, they made a modification, went from Bismarck to Pier. Basically went from Missouri River to Missouri River, Lake Sharp out of Pier, which is great fishing in April. Either one of those places could be muddy. You never know what you're going to get on these early springs, right? Mississippi, we've tried that a couple times. Early in the spring, it was flooded. We had to move. The Missouri is usually pretty safe. I personally was looking forward to going to Bismarck, wanted to fish there on that spring walleye bite. They have moved it due to a few reasons. The locals up there who Zach talked about that on the previous podcast, that they're only allowed 100 boats. NWT obviously hopes for more than 100 boats. And there's already the Big Muddy and some other tournaments. And personally, those guys have that tournament every year. They obviously are front line for that permit. So it just may not have worked out. And then talking to other locals like Heiser, who says the boat ramp situation is kind of a deal because there's a lot of fishing pressure, a lot of locals, and just everybody's fishing there because it's really good fishing, kind of like the Chamberlain area as well. Except you're really opportunity to get a lot of big fish is really good up there. Is why I wanted to go. It's having to launch from down south, and then as you're driving up, it's navigation of that system is very, very hazardous, a little tricky, a lot of stump fields, and we start dealing with a big crowd of boats and tournament boats that sometimes guys are a little careless and kind of flying around. You're looking at, obviously some damage to your boat, your props, your lower units, your boat, or other anglers, whatever the case may be. It just gets tricky, and then getting kind of, log jam between people and people on top of each other. The Missouri down here in South Dakota is pretty wide open. We don't have too many of those areas. There's a few islands and stuff up at the Lake Sharp area. Depending on the water levels, you're going to have to watch out for. But the bite should be good, and everybody should be able to be spread out, decent. So that was a modification they made. Move that to Lake Sharp into April. Should be good. However, party fishing is allowed in the state of South Dakota. So you should be able to box 8, maybe 7, depending on what the tournament permit states. Usually in South Dakota, it's 2-man limit. So it's going to be 8 fish, 2 over 20 inches. 4 per person, with one of those 4 being over 20 or all 4 being under 20. You'll be allowed 2 walleye over 20 inches, walleye, sauger, saugeye, doesn't matter. So that'll be nice. Good way to start the season. Everybody getting some points. Everybody catching some fish. These April tournaments are always just kind of weather dependent. You don't know, but pretty consistent bite nonetheless of it. It should be good. Looking forward to it. And then that rolls into May and into La Crosse, which is another good fishery, right? It's Mississippi River. Never fished it in La Crosse for walleye, or at least not very long. Bass fishing's really good there. Heard it was a great year for walleye there, but that's pool 8, I believe, but you'll be able to go down to 9 and up to 7. I am assuming when these rules regs come out. We fish 9 a lot from the Prairie du Chien days, where it's usually Prairie du Chien's in 10, so you can go up to 9 or down to 11. So you have 9, 10, 11. And here we'll probably get 7, 8, 9 will be available. So should be fine, should be good. Everybody will find fish and catch them there. I think that's mid or late May. Don't know what the water levels will be like, assuming it's going to be all right. We are cold and getting a little bit of snow. But the way I understand it is they could use some. The Mississippi really flows fast and the water levels change. Now, after that is where scheduling and strategic thinking didn't go into play so well, which is why I feel like you're going to have a few less anglers on tour this year, not just because of increase in the pay in. The payout is great, and hopefully that keeps guys kind of rolling that money forward or staying in longer, because now they finished in that 5%. Problem is, if your entry levels aren't 125 and they're only 115 or 110 or even under 100, you're not getting, obviously, the amount of spots you go back shrink. You might only pay 18 spots back or 22 spots, versus 30 or 25 or whatever it is. It's 25% of whatever the field is. So that's just how that works. But nonetheless, it's more. It's still 5% more than what it was. So that is good. Granted, it costs you more to get in. Then you go, I believe it's Dunkirk, New York would be the third stop. So that's Eastern Erie Basin. Great fishing. Once again, I hear the community is really great. Long ways to drive for a lot of people, a lot of cost. Now, at this point, you're chasing points. You finish up at Huron. So another could be a decent, when I say long drive, I'm referring to the Dakotas, even some of the Minnesotas. That's a pretty good John. If you're already out east, boom, it's close. The reality is majority of the anglers fishing NWT, I don't have to look at the percentage of it, but it's well over 50% are Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota. Basically, Minnesota, Wisconsin. That's the majority of the hub. East is a very small percentage, and way west, like Montana, Idaho, or something like that, is super small. Quite a few North Dakota, handful of South Dakota, a ton of Wisconsin and Minnesota. And then there's a pretty good little pod, in that eastern area, Ohio and Lake Erie, and they always show up. So like Dunkirk, Erie tournament always draws a lot of locals. Obviously, they know the body of water. They live close by. They're going to get in it, so that can help the numbers for that. Last time there was a championship, so they couldn't get in unless they fished all year. Now they'll be able to jump in on one. Now, unfortunately, last year, Erie was first, so they jumped in on it, and a lot of those guys did well. Well, they rolled and they stuck with it for the whole year because they did well enough to kind of finance the rest of the season. Well, now you're jumping in on the third. Will they come, far west to jump in on the first two, in hopes to do well there and stay up in the points and then roll over to Huron, which is still, quite a ways away. And personally, a couple of fisheries that I'm good. I don't really care to go fish them all that much. And from the way I understand it, it goes for a lot of other people as well. But they're not as if they're bad fisheries. Huron's tricky just because the championship was there last year. It's always a rough body of water. It is a pretty place. You can go down to Saginaw. Be tricky. It just doesn't seem to hold a lot of really, really big fish. There are clearly big fish there, but they move around a lot. It's just a tricky fishery, and I mean, you just don't see a lot of tournaments there. The Michigan Walleye Tour goes, around that area, and those guys do well. And since this is an open regular season tournament, maybe some of those guys will get in and help keep those numbers up. I'm just not anticipating it, but have been wrong before, and hopefully I am wrong again, and the numbers are good, and those championship payouts stay where they need to be. So that's kind of where it is going into 2025. So it is a business. NWT is a organization with ownership and management companies. They're there to make some money and then give us a platform and a place to go compete. And if you don't like it, don't do it. If you want to dip your toes in the water, you can pay your couple $1,000 entry fee and meet the boat minimum requirements, which are pretty minimal, and jump in and kind of put your money where your mouth is. There's some comments on there, some guys talking about like the team thing. That's ridiculous. Yes, the headlines are a little misleading with a payout increase. It's a pay placement increase. But as always, we're always playing with their own money. A couple other things is so we covered the schedule. So strategically thinking, when I look at the schedule, if I'm making it on the back end instead of seeing which communities are just going to give us the best money, first I'm going to put out an RFP to the communities, and we want to go to the places that we can go. That's going to benefit the community. It's going to bring people there, maybe not at their peak time, so it's not necessarily which community is going to pay us the most. We want to go to a place that's going to have a good bite, how we can bring more money to that local community, and a place that anglers want to go, right? So they're going to show out. We're going to get good boat numbers, more money for that community, more money for all the anglers, more money, and everybody wins. Tough bite. I don't really care if it's a tough bite or not. Green Bay last year was a tough bite. That was okay. When you got on a few fish, you knew that. I think it's tough for everybody. It's okay. Those make for better tournaments, I think. But boy, an easy tournament is always nice too. But then the weights are all so close. You're really battling in your head on what you got to keep. When it's a tough bite, you know what you're keeping. You're keeping everything that hits the live well, so it hits the boat, it's going in the box. But when you think about it, and we did that this year with Sakakawea, is when your fourth tournament, when it's on the line, when you're on the border of points, you're sitting in that mid 30s to 50s in points, to where if you're in the 20s, you're probably like, I have to show up. My goal is to make the championship. I just need to drive. I need to drive 18 hours, whatever it is, catch one fish, and I'm safe. Because if you zero, you're not making the championship. That ain't happening. Too good. Everybody's too good out there. Unless 80% of that field zeros in a tournament because it's horrible, you're not going to make the championship. And Green Bay was like that. And if you zeroed, you didn't make championship. So it's pretty simple. You need to. So by catching a fish, you got your points. Maybe it was obviously you did horrible in tournament, but you secured your spot. You may move from 20th to 35th place, whatever. You're still in top 40. You're in the championship. Now, if you're in that 30-ish to maybe 50, you need to have a good tournament. Well, are you going to invest your $2,000 entry fee or $2,000 in travel, fuel? You maybe got $4,000, $5,000, $6,000+ wrapped up in a tournament to make the championship on a whim where you have to go have a good championship. So if I have to drive clear east, to Dunkirk or Huron for the fourth tournament, and you're sitting at 50th, you made that decision for me personally. I'm good. I'm not going to go. And that happened with a couple guys this year. I know at least one was sitting in 39th, 40th, said, I'm not going. The rest of the kind of travel team didn't make it or was sitting too far out. It was kind of out of reach. We did have a good turnout in Sakakawea. A lot of locals got in it, and awesome. That place always shows out because it's phenomenal fishery. People just want to go there. Kind of the same with Erie. It's a place people just want to go. So they usually show out pretty good. The whole Missouri River system usually has pretty good numbers for the most part. So that's something to take in consideration. I always like to see that fourth tournament centralized, a Bago, a Green Bay, somewhere like that. That's pretty central from east to west, where everybody's got that, couple hours to 6-7 hours, not those 14+ hour drives. And they're like, because it's a lot of expenses come down, and they can congregate there and have that. But when you have to keep it so far one direction or the other one, you're kind of losing a little bit of people there. That's just my personal opinion on that. We do angler surveys. Whether they have taken stock in that or not, I don't know. I haven't seen too many changes from it, but as the pros, we have asked for increase in entry fees, for increase in payouts. And I guess we kind of got that with the going back to the 1 and 4 versus 1 and 5. So Bass, if you notice over the last year, has had some challenges as well. They changed their payout schedule. They modified it considerably, which they brought it clear down to $500 payout, which is a slap in the face at that level, but no entry fees. So, that was a $40,000 savings from the get-go. But if you saw all the guys, they did the math, so it really only benefited a couple guys, and those were the guys that just weren't doing well. Majority of the field that was doing well because they pay out a top 50 or whatever it is are cashing checks of some sort. We're like, no, this is a big hit, from my $40,000 investment up front. It's all done different. They're not paying to play. They've earned their way in it. Okay. They got to get in early in deposits and pay the entries up front or percentages of it. It's a whole different system because they're dealing with a lot more money. That was kind of a decision that it looked like Bass has kind of made on their own. Since then, they have stood up an angler advisory board from some of the anglers, received some input and feedback from them, and now they have modified that to the anglers have a $10,000 investment into that season. Where they call the entry fees or whatever, they're all putting in 10,000, and that brought their payouts back up to make a little bit more sense. It balanced it out, and the anglers are happy with it. When you're talking about a multi-million-dollar circuit like that and placing 40th and getting a $500 check, that's no thanks. You covered your gas for 2 days. It's just an insult in a sense at that point. So the NWT, we do not have an advisory board. Maybe we need one. We have a unofficial group, and there's a handful of groups really that have communications with ownership and management. And they've listened and taken some of that to heart, I think, and have made a few changes and adjustments from it. Some of the people, definitely have their ear, like the Next Bite guys, of course. But I can tell you that they're some of the most, outspoken guys when it comes to trying to get changes made for the better of the anglers. People think, well, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. I get you. But this is a great group of guys who are looking out for the anglers and saying, we want more of this. We need to do this better, whatever the case is. Definitely providing feedback, as well as myself and many others. And a few other groups are all, sending emails and letters and things like that. We've had plenty of conference calls with them as well. So we'll see where things go. But 2025 is, that's the schedule. Lake Sharp, La Crosse, Mississippi River, Lake Erie, Dunkirk, New York, and Lake Huron, and then the championship at Green Bay, which Green Bay, I think it's August, September championship. That's a great place to go. Great place for a championship. Should be a great bite. That's going to keep some guys on the hook when they go. I would love to go to that, but the two before it, just no thanks. You think about the championship, it's no entry, right? So you earn your way there, which is great, which they changed this a few years ago, which was awesome in the way it should be. Okay, so it's last place there. Last payout out of 40 is 20 is like $4,100. Okay, well, sure if that covers 2 entry fees, but for some of us doing the math going to Huron and Dunkirk is way more than $4,000. So it just doesn't, do you think you could beat, cash check? Sure. But you're dealing with the top, the best 40 and you still got a place, right? Obviously everybody thinks you're going in and thinking you can win it. And that's the only mindset you should have. But you still got to beat at least 20 to cash a check. So easier said than done by all means. But that's where we're at. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. No one's making you. I know there's a few people who got sponsorships. It's in your contract to fish these circuits. And if they're asking you to do that, I hope they're paying for it, or being compensated well to do it. I saw somebody made a comment, like I said, they think everybody's sponsored. And I'm telling you that's not the case. I will go on a limb and say a majority of the boat people, the boat wraps and all that kind of stuff, I got one, are paying for that stuff themselves. Not all of them, by all means, not all of them. There's a good handful of guys that their companies or that wrap, or they've worked a deal out with whoever wrapped it to pay for it, which is how it should go. But some are just paying for it out of their pocket, which is nothing wrong with that. They're giving that back to their sponsors or whatever they have on it. And they're helping, save the condition of their boat just a little bit from some dock rash by having that extra layer. It's not super expensive for those wraps. So it's not cheap either though, nonetheless. So that's where we're at. If I got something wrong or mixed up, I'm sure I'll hear about it in the comments, but those are just a couple quick hot topics. Y'all been sending me messages wanting to hear, the breakdown a little bit more. Go read some of those comments. Bala broke it down a little bit, on the net of 7,750 is still what's going back into the, the Federation's pocket or a Bass for whoever is making money on the circuits. That'd be Bass Pro in a sense. But like I said, there's additional costs that have obviously occurred for all these organizations or anybody running tournaments over these last few years in the state of the economy. So hopefully things in the economy turn here real soon. And coming in our new year with our new administration, we can only hope things get better and gas goes down, because that's probably one of our biggest expenses. And that can wash out that 250 increase real quick by getting gas back down into the low to mid $2 a gallon versus the $3+ that you're having, or if you're putting premium in your boat, almost $4, because these boats are big and they got big fuel tanks and it costs a lot of money. So, but if you're chasing a dream, it's got to cost you a little money, but the goal is to win some of that back and love what you're doing. If you're not loving it, don't do it. You got to be having fun. But if you're looking to dip your toes in it, just know what you're getting into. And don't fish tournaments to make a living. Fish tournaments because you love to fish. You love to compete. They're giving you a platform to go do it. So be thankful for that. Thank the NWT. Thank Bass Pro. Go buy your stuff over there and say, hey, I appreciate you putting this on. No one's ever going to get it right. It's going to be a constant, fluid, it's an evolving type thing. Everybody that runs tournaments has all these headaches and deals with this stuff. You can't take 300 people and make them all happy. You do your best that you can to do things to the best, hold it to the highest standards, and there's a lot of changes on stuff that a lot of us would see. And some of those are starting to happen slowly. I know they have aspirations over there to make it the biggest, best thing out there. It is the National Walleye Tour. It is not the only pro level circuit out there. There are other circuits that you can fish and call yourself a pro on as well. So if you're looking at getting into tournaments, I'd recommend starting at some of those smaller local things, get a good feel for how it goes. But yet, then again, don't be intimidated by just jumping in. If you're fishing on Mississippi River is a great example. If you live there and you know that body of water, read the rules. Great place to jump in, because I guarantee you have the upper hand over guys that have never fished that across area, because you know things. Red Wing last year was won by a local. It happens quite often. Those guys know those bodies of water like the back of their hand, and they have the upper hand. And as long as the format is pay to play and anybody can jump in, snipers, as we like to call them, the locals, that's the only way they're going to keep those numbers up to 125 average or above, to keep those payouts where as advertised, is by having those guys in, whether we like it or not. So maybe someday down the road it'll change and we'll pay our entry fees up front, and it'll be limited to the 80 that qualified over the last year plus the next 40 down or whatever it is. I mean, they have to start somehow. We can get to that level, but we're a little ways from it, if ever. So that's it, folks. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, stay safe. We will see you on the water or ice, depending on where you're at.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about this new line that Seaguar introduced this year. It's been on the market for a couple years, but it's been over in Japan. They just brought it over to the United States this year, and I absolutely love it. It's called PEX8. This is by far the thinnest diameter braid I have ever used. This is still an 8-strand braided line with such a thin diameter. It's unbelievable. I'm using an 18-pound test today, and it feels like 2 pound. The advantages to this thin diameter is, if it's windy out, I'm not catching much wind, I get less bow in the line. High pressure situations where the fish are, taking on a lot of fishing pressure, a thinner diameter line, less visible, of course. Current in the rivers, I'm going to cut the current a little better. I'm going to get better control, and they did all this without losing any of its strength. This stuff is still strong as all the Seaguar braided lines, and the sensitivity is second to none. So check this out. This is PEX8 over at seaguar.com.